When NBA superstar Stephen Curry found himself at the counter of a McDonald's without his wallet, an elderly homeless man stepped up with an incredible gesture, offering the last bit of money he had to cover the meal. Little did this kind stranger know that the person he was helping wasn't just a down-to-earth guy, but one of basketball's greatest players. Steph, being who he is, made sure this moment of kindness didn't go unnoticed. Downtown Oakland baked under the scorching afternoon sun as Stephen Curry navigated his white Tesla Model X through the Saturday traffic. Beside him sat his wife, Aisha, while their eldest daughter, Riley Elizabeth Curry, relaxed in the back seat. They were headed to Oakland's local community sports center, where the Warriors host casual games for fans and families. As they drove, conversation flowed naturally. Steph glanced in the rearview mirror, catching Riley's eye as he smiled and asked, "Excited for the game today, Riley?" Riley beamed with enthusiasm. "Yeah. Will I get to play too, Dad?" she asked eagerly. Steph laughed warmly. "Well, it's more of a laid-back game for everyone to watch, but maybe afterward, we can shoot some hoops together." Aisha turned slightly in her seat to face Riley. "Your dad's right, sweetie. These community games aren't like the usual ones. It's all about fun and spending time with people. It's a chance to relax and connect with everyone." Riley's eyes lit up with curiosity. "Will there be lots of kids there too, Dad?" she asked. Steph chuckled. "Of course. The whole point is to bring families together. Speaking of family, how do you think Ryan and Cannon are doing with Aunt Zora?" Aisha smiled and chimed in, looking back at Riley. "I bet they're having a blast. You know how much Ryan loves playing the big sister to Cannon." "But why couldn't they come with us?" Riley asked, a hint of disappointment in her voice. Aisha softened her tone and explained gently. "Well, sweetheart, Cannon's still little. Spending so many hours at a basketball game might be too much for him." Here's the paraphrased version with the same style and emotional tone. When Steph remarked, "He'll be fine with Ryan looking after him at home," Aisha nodded in agreement. "That's right. And Aunt Zora will take good care of them too. Once Cannon is a little older, we'll have plenty of family outings together." As their drive continued, the conversation naturally shifted. Riley's upcoming school year, Aisha's latest cooking experiments, and Steph's rigorous training schedule. The warmth of their family dynamic shone through in their easy laughter and light-hearted banter. Suddenly, Riley's voice broke through from the back seat. "Dad, I'm hungry. Can we grab something to eat before the game?" Steph glanced at the time on the dashboard display, considering her request. They were running on schedule, and a quick snack wouldn't hurt. "All right, but let's keep it light," he said with a grin. "We don't want you feeling sluggish during the game, okay?" "Okay." Riley agreed excitedly. As if on cue, a McDonald's sign appeared ahead. Steph smoothly turned into the drive-through lane, only to find a long line of cars already ahead. The line crawled along, each vehicle taking longer than expected at the ordering window. Steph drummed his fingers lightly on the steering wheel, glancing occasionally at the clock on the dashboard. Despite the Tesla's advanced cooling system, the heat of the afternoon was beginning to seep into the car. "Looks like we might be here for a while," Aisha remarked, noticing Steph's growing impatience. "Yeah," Steph replied with a small frown. "I just hope this doesn't make us late for the game." The family filled the wait with casual chatter, discussing their plans for the coming week and sharing fond memories of past family outings. Though frustrating, the slow-moving line offered them a rare pocket of quiet time together in their busy lives. As they inched forward, Steph noticed a figure moving between the cars. An elderly homeless man, his face weathered and his clothes tattered, was making his way down the line, quietly asking for donations. Despite his obvious hardships, the man carried himself with quiet dignity, his gaze a mix of hope and resignation. "Dad, Mom, look," Riley said, her voice full of concern as she leaned forward in her seat. "That man looks like he really needs help. Can we do something?" Steph and Aisha exchanged a glance, both moved by their daughter's empathy. Aisha searched through her purse, but sighed in frustration. "I don't have any cash on me," she said apologetically. Steph reached for his wallet, his brow furrowing as he opened it. "I've only got $20 on me," he muttered, surprised at how little he'd brought. But it made sense. This was a casual community game, and Aisha usually handled the money in these situations. As the man approached their car, Steph hesitated. He needed to save enough for Riley's meal, but couldn't ignore the man's plight. The decision weighed heavily on him. Riley, sensing his hesitation, spoke up softly. "It's okay, Dad. We don't need much to eat before the game. We should help him." Steph felt a swell of pride at his daughter's selflessness. After a brief moment, he rolled down the window and extended a $10 bill to the man. The man's eyes widened in surprise. Gratitude etched deeply into his face. "Bless you, child," he said, his voice filled with genuine appreciation. He didn't seem to recognize the generous stranger as one of basketball's greatest players. Just as quickly as he had appeared, the man disappeared around the corner, vanishing from view in the rearview mirror. The car fell into a brief silence, the encounter leaving a lasting impression on all of them. "That was a kind thing you did, Dad," Riley said softly, her voice carrying a sense of admiration. Steph smiled at her through the mirror. "Sometimes, Riley, even the smallest act of kindness can make a big difference in someone's day. We're lucky, and it's important to help others whenever we can." Aisha nodded, her hand resting on Steph's arm as a silent gesture of support. The brief act of generosity seemed to change the mood in the car, reminding them all of the value of compassion and giving. "Do you think he'll be okay, Dad?" Riley asked, craning her neck to try and catch another glimpse of the man. Steph turned slightly, his expression softening as he looked at his daughter's concerned face. "I hope so, sweetheart. We did what we could for now." As the minutes ticked by, their patience in the seemingly endless drive-through line began to wear thin. Steph's eyes darted more frequently to the clock on the dashboard, the digital numbers serving as a constant reminder of their game's approaching start time. He glanced at Aisha, who gave him a reassuring smile and placed a hand gently on his arm, silently acknowledging his growing concern. Even Aisha's comforting touch couldn't entirely ease the tension building in Steph's shoulders. "This is taking way longer than it should," he muttered, his usual calm demeanor beginning to fray. "Are we going to miss the game, Dad?" Riley's concerned voice piped up from the back seat. Steph turned and offered her a reassuring smile. "No, sweetie, we won't miss it. We might be a little late, but that's okay. Sometimes things don't go as planned." Unable to sit idle any longer, Steph made a decision. Turning to Aisha and Riley, he said, "I'm going to check what's holding things up. I'll be right back." Unbuckling his seatbelt, Steph stepped out of the Tesla, his athletic frame unfolding as he strode toward the ordering station. The car ahead blocked direct access to the speaker, forcing him to approach on foot. As he neared, movement caught his eye. A young McDonald's employee, looking flustered and slightly out of breath, hurried toward him. "I'm sorry, sir," the worker began, his words rushing out. "We have to close the drive-through. A car at the front of the line broke down, and we can't move it." Steph's eyebrows rose in surprise. "A broken-down car? How long has this been going on?" The employee shifted awkwardly. "It just happened, but we can't clear the lane until everyone backs out. I'm really sorry for the inconvenience. If you'd like, you can park and come inside to order." Steph nodded, understanding but still frustrated by the wasted time. Returning to the car, he slid back into the driver's seat. "What's going on, honey?" Aisha asked, watching his expression. Steph sighed, running a hand through his hair. "There's a broken-down car at the front of the line. They're shutting down the drive-through and asking everyone to back out." Glancing at the clock again, he weighed their options. Before he could decide, Riley spoke up, her voice showing remarkable maturity. "Maybe we should just skip the food so we're not late for the game." Steph thought for a moment before shaking his head. "We've already spent time waiting. Let's park and go inside. It should be quicker." With the plan settled, Steph carefully reversed the Tesla, giving enough space for other cars to exit the line. Then, he maneuvered into a nearby parking spot, the sleek vehicle gleaming under the afternoon sun. As they got ready to head inside, Riley announced she wanted to go in with her dad. Aisha, occupied with a video call to Zora about Ryan and Cannon, decided to stay in the car. "I'll wait here," she said, pulling out her phone. "I'll just be a few minutes," Steph reassured her as he and Riley made their way to the entrance. Inside, the stark fluorescent lighting contrasted sharply with the warm afternoon sun. As their eyes adjusted, Steph and Riley stumbled upon a tense scene near the side door. An employee, his face set in a stern frown, was aggressively confronting several homeless individuals. Some of them had been searching through trash bins, while others were simply sitting quietly without making any purchases. The encounter was beginning to draw the attention of other customers, creating an uncomfortable atmosphere. "Dad, why is that man being so mean to those people?" Riley tugged at her father's sleeve, her voice tinged with concern. Steph crouched down to her level, sensing the importance of the moment. "Well, sweetheart, businesses have rules about who can stay in their stores, but you're right. The way he's handling it seems overly harsh." Riley's brow furrowed as she tried to process her father's explanation, her young mind grappling with the complexity of the situation. "But couldn't they just be nicer about it?" Riley asked, her young voice filled with earnestness. Steph nodded thoughtfully, choosing his words carefully. "It's a complicated situation, Riley. The store has rules, but you're absolutely right. No matter the circumstances, people should always be treated with kindness and respect." As they moved toward the counter, Riley's eyes widened. "Dad, look. It's the man from earlier." Steph followed her gaze and, sure enough, saw the homeless man they had helped earlier completing his order. A quiet sense of satisfaction filled Steph, knowing the man had used the money for food rather than anything harmful. "See, Riley," Steph said softly, crouching slightly to her level. "This is why helping others is so important. We don't always know their story or what they're going through." Riley nodded solemnly, her young face serious as she absorbed her dad's words. As they waited to order, Steph continued to explain. "It's important to be wise about how we help others," he said gently. "But it's just as important not to judge too harshly. If we're overly critical, we might end up not helping at all." Riley tilted her head, processing his words. "So we should try to help, even if we're not sure how it'll turn out." Steph smiled proudly at her insight. "Exactly. It's about having the intention to do good, even in small ways, while staying thoughtful. You'll understand it better as you grow." He brushed a strand of hair out of her face as Riley's gaze returned to the elderly man. "Can we say hi to him?" she asked softly. Steph considered for a moment. "Let's order our food first, and then we can check if he'd like some company." "How about that?" Riley nodded eagerly, and they stepped forward to order. The cashier, a young woman with a warm smile, greeted them cheerfully, though her eyes widened slightly as she recognized the NBA star standing before her. "What can I get for you today?" she asked, her tone friendly but slightly awestruck. Riley spoke up first, excitement in her voice. "Chicken nuggets and fries, please." Steph chuckled and nodded. "And I'll have a cheeseburger with iced tea." As the cashier entered the order and announced the total, Steph reached for his wallet, only to realize it wasn't there. Panic flashed across his face as he patted his pockets. "Oh no," he muttered. "I must have left my wallet in the car." By now, several customers had begun to whisper among themselves, recognizing the famous Warriors player. Riley, noticing her dad's discomfort, quickly offered, "I can go get it for you, Dad." Steph gave her a grateful smile. "It's okay, sweetie. I'll grab it. You wait here, all right?" Just as he turned to leave, the elderly man stepped forward, holding out several worn bills. His hands trembled slightly as he spoke. "Please," the man said, his voice rough but kind. "I couldn't help but overhear. Let me help you. You were kind to me earlier, and I'd like to return the favor." Steph's throat tightened at the gesture. "That's very kind of you, sir," he began sincerely, "but I couldn't possibly." The man interrupted gently. "Please, let me do this. You helped me when I needed it. Now let me do the same." Understanding the dignity in allowing someone to give, Steph accepted the man's offer with humility. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Your kindness means more than I can say. I'll pay you back, I promise." The cashier processed the payment, the beep of the register marking a moment Steph knew would stay with him. It wasn't about the money. It was about the dignity, generosity, and mutual respect exchanged in that brief interaction. Guiding the elderly man aside, Steph gently explained, "Sir, I'm going to grab my wallet from the car so I can repay you. Please, enjoy your meal in the meantime." Turning to Riley, he added, "Would you mind waiting here with our new friend while I run outside?" "Of course." Riley agreed enthusiastically, ready to keep the man company. Steph hurried to the car, the bright afternoon sun beating down as he reached the Tesla. Aisha, still engrossed in her video call, glanced up briefly as he approached. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Forgot my wallet," Steph replied with a chuckle. "Be right back." As he re-entered the restaurant, wallet in hand, an unsettling scene greeted him. The pickup station was empty, and so was the elderly man's table. Riley was nowhere in sight. Scanning the restaurant, Steph's instincts kicked in as he heard commotion near the side door. He rushed toward the noise and found the manager, a stocky man with a perpetually furrowed brow, roughly removing the old man. "Stop it!" Riley's voice rang out, filled with urgency and defiance. "He paid for our food. He's allowed to be here." The manager dismissed her protests, his grip on the elderly man unrelenting. "This isn't a shelter," he sneered. "We have standards." Steph stepped forward, his voice calm but commanding. "What's going on here? This man is our guest, and he has every right to be in this restaurant." The manager jabbed a finger at Steph, his tone dripping with disdain. "I don't care who you think you are. In my restaurant, I make the rules. And I say homeless trash doesn't belong here." Steph's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice steady. "Your standards should include treating all paying customers with respect. This man is a paying customer." The manager scoffed, his laugh sharp and mocking. "Respect? For someone who probably hasn't showered in weeks. Get real." Riley, holding up their receipt, said firmly, "This proves he paid. You can't kick him out. He was nice to us." The manager glanced at the receipt, his expression flickering briefly before he dismissed it. "I don't care who paid. If you like him so much, why don't you eat outside with him?" Steph's calm resolve hardened. "We're staying right here. And so is he." Yet firm. It's a reminder that we all have the power to choose kindness over judgment. Frank here is no different than any of us. He deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. Frank, emboldened by the support pouring in from the live stream, continued, "I don't blame people for the way they see me sometimes. But today, this little girl and her dad reminded me that not everyone looks at me like I'm nothing." He glanced at Riley, who beamed back at him. Steph wrapped up the live stream with a call to action. "Let's do better, all of us. If you're watching this, remember that your words and actions matter. Let's work to create a world where people like Frank aren't treated as less than human just because of their circumstances." As the stream ended, Steph looked at Frank. "We're going to make this right, Mr. Thompson. This isn't over." Steph immediately called his PR team and explained the situation. Within minutes, his team began drafting a statement while others reached out to McDonald's corporate office. Meanwhile, Riley sat beside Frank, holding his hand and chatting with him about everything from her favorite basketball players to her love of chicken nuggets. A short time later, Steph's phone buzzed. It was a representative from McDonald's headquarters. They had seen the live stream and were deeply concerned. They promised an internal investigation and assured Steph that the manager's behavior would be addressed. The day ended with Steph driving Frank to a nearby shelter he partnered with, ensuring he had a safe place to sleep and a warm meal to eat. Before they parted ways, Steph handed Frank a card with his contact information. "Frank," Steph said, his voice steady, "if you ever need help, you call me, okay? And don't worry, I'll be checking in." Frank smiled, tears in his eyes. "Thank you, Steph. And thank you, little Riley. You two have given me more kindness in one day than I've had in years." As they drove home, Riley turned to her dad. "We did the right thing today, didn't we?" Steph glanced at his daughter, his heart swelling with pride. "We did, Riley. And remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about trying to do good whenever we can." Riley nodded, her young mind absorbing the lesson. "I'll always try to help, Dad. Just like you." Steph smiled, knowing that today had not only been a lesson for Riley, but a reminder for himself. The smallest acts of kindness could make the biggest difference. But smile at Frank's humor. "Well, Frank, in basketball, we don't just play. We learn how to take care of our teammates. And right now, you're part of our team." Frank's expression softened, and he nodded, visibly touched by the sentiment. "I've never been part of a team before, but I think I like it." As they drove toward the community sports center, Riley animatedly told Frank about her dad's basketball games, peppering the conversation with questions about Frank's life. Slowly, Frank began to open up, sharing stories of his younger days, his favorite basketball players, and the challenges that led to his current circumstances. When they arrived at the sports center, Steph and Riley led Frank inside, where a small medical team stationed at the venue examined his injuries more thoroughly. The staff, recognizing Steph, were eager to help and ensured Frank received proper care. While Frank was being treated, Steph took a moment to step outside and check his phone. His live stream had gone viral, with millions of views and thousands of comments pouring in from people offering support, sharing their own stories, and calling for action against the discriminatory behavior displayed by the McDonald's manager. Steph's PR team had already crafted a powerful statement, and McDonald's corporate office had issued a public apology, promising an investigation into the incident. Local news outlets were picking up the story, turning the event into a national conversation about kindness, discrimination, and the treatment of homeless individuals. Inside the sports center, Riley brought Frank a bottle of water and a plate of food from the concession stand. "Mr. Frank," she said with a big smile, "you're going to watch my dad play, and I promise it'll be amazing." Frank laughed, his spirits visibly lifted. "Well, little lady, I'll be rooting for him. But I think he's already won the most important game today." As Steph prepared to take the court for his warm-up, he looked over at Riley and Frank sitting together in the stands, chatting like old friends. He felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the opportunity to use his platform for good, but for the reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness could ripple out and inspire change in ways he hadn't imagined. That evening, as the game concluded with a victory for Steph's team, he walked over to Frank and Riley in the stands. The crowd erupted into cheers, not just for the game, but for the man who had taken a stand for what was right. Steph helped Frank to his feet and addressed the crowd. "This game is about teamwork, resilience, and lifting each other up. Today, my family and I were reminded of the power of standing together and showing kindness. Let's carry that same energy into our everyday lives, because everyone deserves to feel like they're part of a team." The audience roared in agreement, and as the lights dimmed in the sports center, Steph knew this was just the beginning of something much bigger than basketball. It was a reminder to himself, his daughter, and the world that standing up for what's right could change lives, and that even one small act of kindness could light the way for countless others. The evening had begun as a simple family outing, but for Steph Curry and his daughter Riley, it quickly transformed into something far more meaningful. The incident at McDonald's, a blatant act of discrimination against Frank, an elderly homeless man, was still fresh in everyone's minds. The live stream Steph initiated had gone viral, exposing the injustice and rallying thousands of viewers to the cause. Yet, as the sun set over Oakland, the focus shifted from outrage to action. In the Tesla, Steph drove with quiet determination, the hum of the electric engine filling the space between reflective silences. In the back seat, Riley shared her chicken nuggets with Frank, who tentatively nibbled on the cold fries he had managed to buy earlier. "Go ahead, Mr. Thompson," Steph encouraged warmly. "I know it's not fresh, but it'll do you good." Frank nodded, his gratitude evident as he took a bite of his burger. As they neared the sports center, Riley's curiosity broke the silence. "Mr. Frank, have you always lived in Oakland?" Frank smiled at her question, his voice carrying the weight of years. "No, not always. I moved here for work about 30 years ago. I was a carpenter back then, loved working with my hands. Built some beautiful things, too." His voice softened as he spoke of his wife and the life they had built together before illness and financial hardships took it all away. The car fell silent, Riley absorbing the gravity of his words, while Steph and Aisha exchanged knowing glances. When they arrived at the sports center, Steph ensured Frank was comfortable, guiding him to a seat near the court and securing cold compresses for his injuries. Riley stayed by his side, chatting animatedly and introducing him to other families. The warmth of her presence seemed to ease Frank's initial apprehension, and soon he was sharing basketball tips with her, his passion for the game shining through. "See how they're setting up that screen?" Frank pointed out during the game, his voice alive with excitement. "That's to give the shooter space." "Wow, Mr. Frank, you know so much," Riley replied, her eyes wide with admiration. Frank chuckled. "Used to play a bit in my day. Nothing like your dad, though." On the court, Steph played with a renewed sense of purpose, each glance toward the stands affirming why this night mattered. It wasn't just a game anymore. It was a reminder of the power of kindness and the connections that bind us. After the game, the family gathered with Frank on the sidelines, the empty court stretching behind them. Steph took a deep breath, his voice steady yet filled with emotion. "Mr. Thompson," he began, "we want to help you, not just for tonight, but for good. We have an apartment nearby where you can stay for now, and we'll help you get back on your feet." Frank's eyes filled with tears. "You've already done so much. I don't want to be a burden." "You're not a burden," Aisha interjected, her tone gentle but firm. "You deserve a chance to rebuild, and we want to help." Riley chimed in, her young voice earnest. "Please, Mr. Frank. You're our friend now. We can't leave you on the street." Overwhelmed, Frank nodded, his voice shaking as he whispered, "Thank you. You don't know what this means to me." Steph placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We'll take care of everything. You're not alone in this." As they left the sports center, the cool night air was a welcome contrast to the day's tension. Under the twinkling Oakland sky, a new chapter began, not just for Frank, but for everyone involved. They had faced injustice and responded with compassion, proving that small acts of kindness could lead to profound change. And as the Tesla carried them toward a brighter future, Steph felt a deep sense of purpose. This was more than a game. It was a testament to the power of community and the belief that no one is ever truly forgotten.